All right, welcome everyone. It is 4:30, so we call this meeting of Dunn County's Judiciary and Law Committee to order. And first item is call of the roll. Supervisor Vandermeulen, Supervisor Wilsey, Supervisor Jetson, and Supervisor Gilbert are all present. And approval of the minutes from our last meeting a couple months ago on June 24th. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Supervisor Vandermeulen, Supervisor Wilsey. Any discussion of the minutes? Corrections? Being none, all in favor of approving the minutes from June?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Any public comment for today? Katie? All right. We have the staff reports today, and we also have the proposed budgets from each department. And so we'll go through the staff reports first, and then we'll come back to the budgets after that. First staff report is child support. Hi, Josie. Anything that you'd like to add or highlight in your report?
The last few months have been a blur, to tell you the truth, but we've made it through. We are training our new administrative assistant. The on-site program audit with the state was last Wednesday. She has 30 days to compile her results, so I can keep you up to date on how we did on that. And my one staff who was supposed to be coming back any day now did not get cleared to return to work. So we will be short-staffed at least probably through September.
Sounds good. And a lot of action in the dunk tank, I saw.
Mostly just my daughter. She's a soccer player, but apparently she can throw a softball too.
Yeah. Anybody have any questions for Josie? All right, thank you. Next up is emergency management. Melissa?
Hi there. I guess I only have one small thing to add is today AT&T did come on site and did a survey, which is required to start the NG 911 process. So they had to inspect our radio room, which some of you know is pretty tight in there. And they had a little bit of trouble finding the room that we're going to need, but IT worked with us and is going to give us some space in the room behind our radio room. So we've started the process to move towards, getting our EZNet installed and working through the NG 911. So they were on scene for that. And I applied for that grant like a year and a half ago and it was approved. And I'm contemplating doing an amendment to that grant to add in some more equipment. The state had another grant opportunity. And when I told them the items that I was looking at, they wanted me just to amend the one that I did. So I'm looking at doing that soon too. So that's kind of all NG 911 related. It's just based on the timeline that we're going to have available to us if I'll be able to do an amendment to my grant to add in some more equipment. So that's really all that's new since my report.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned elected officials class, and I looked for it in the email. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right spot. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. We have a course that is designed, it's a 4-hour course. It's designed to help kind of rural elected officials work through emergency situations. It was focused more towards maybe the townships as far as elected officials. I think we needed 15 people to make the class, official. And I think that was able to happen today. So I'm not really sure if we were able to send that out to you guys yet, if you wanted to attend, but we might be able to invite you guys to attend that class too. And it's basically just to teach them kind of, incident command, what they would do in an emergency, what resources are available. Because a lot of them are, get elected at that level and really don't understand the full impact of what their role would be in an emergency. So, Yeah, it's a nice 4-hour class, short enough that, is not gonna deter people to attend, but has enough information packed in it to just kind of to pique their curiosity to maybe take some more classes that are available.
I see.
Mhm.
That's great. Anybody have any questions for Melissa? Looks like you're done.
Okay.
All
thank you.
right. Next up, Marcy, the medical examiner.
Good evening. I do not have anything to add, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer.
Doesn't look like it. Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you.
Next up is the sheriff's department. Anything to add or highlight to your report, Sheriff?
No, other than we've made one contingent job offer for one of the applicants for the open patrol position. So hopefully we'll get that person on board in the next couple of weeks once they pass the psych eval, physical, and drug testing. So, and hopefully be able to get a couple more out there to fill our vacancies.
Sounds good. Anybody have any questions for the sheriff? Not a lot of questions today. Next up is the clerk of courts. Katie, anything to add to your report?
No, I don't have anything additional to add.
All
Those
right.
questions.
Any questions for Katie? All right, moving on to CJCC. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, I would just add that we did have our family treatment court picnic here a couple of weeks ago for staff and families. So that was just a nice opportunity to have a casual outing with our families in family treatment court. And then I would just highlight on Friday was our last day of our treatment court coordinator. So we've got the hiring process kicked in at this point and hope to have somebody in that position in the next couple of weeks. Other than that, I'd be happy to address any questions that you might have.
Doesn't look like
I
it.
guess I would also add that during the admin committee, they did approve our CJCC budget. We're under the admin committee as the home committee. So our budget is not on this list, but in general, it was 0% increase to the levy for the CJCC.
Thank you, Sarah. And district attorney, Andrea, anything to add or highlight?
Yeah, the only thing I forgot to add was I did submit my biannual budget request to the state prosecutor's office. It's a really simple form. It's you either check the box, I'm asking for continued funding, I'm asking for increased funding, or I'm asking for a decrease. And I just asked for a continuation. We did recently complete, they take a 3-year average of cases and give them certain weight depending on the amount of time associated with certain cases. Based on that, we need one more assistant district attorney, but the odds of getting that are slim to none. So I just continued with what we have. I think we're in a pretty good spot. But I know one assistant ADA is retiring soon, and I'm not certain if I'll be able to fill that position or not. He has about 14 months of sabbatical. And so there's some argument whether that can be filled or not. So my last email communication was, well, your county can fund an assistant district attorney position. And I said, no, that's the requirement of the state. These are state positions. And their argument was, well, the position's not vacant because he's still on the payroll. And so they're talking to their higher ups, given we are a small county and, the loss of a prosecutor for 14 months could cause a lot of issues. So I'm still waiting to hear back on that. I'm hoping I'll have more information next month. So that's all I have for now.
All right, thank you for that. We have nothing for items 6 and 7 on the agenda. And so we will, for item 6, I should say. And so we will move on to item 7. And Katie passed out packets when the supervisors arrived of each department's proposed budget for 2025. And we will ask department heads to go through them a little bit and highlight some changes, and then we will vote after discussion to pass it along to the executive committee. First up, again, is child support. Josie.
Hello. Okay, so the largest increase to my budget from last year is salary and fringe benefits. Of the expenses that are within my control, I did not increase any operational expenses. There was some increase in operational expenses due to, like more IT related changes and things. So even though my 2025 proposed budget ask is 7% more than last year, my levy ask is actually 12% less because of how my reimbursements work from the federal government. So the more qualified expenditures I have, the more reimbursements I receive from them. So it's not a very large budget. It's not a very controversial budget. All the services that we provide are mandated. And I did the math quickly. About 94.25% is salary and fringe benefits. So only 5.75% is operating expenses. So if I was asked to cut, I don't know where I would cut it from, I guess is what. And then with how the reimbursements work, if I were asked to cut $1, I actually have to cut 3 because I also lose the reimbursement. So, questions? I'm personally pleased with the benefits package, but such is life. It always seems to get more expensive, not less. And then those changes could be too, I actually had 2 staff who in 23 were on their spouse's insurance, and their spouses both worked for the school district, and the school district's plan significantly changed, and so they jumped to Dunn County. So
Could you, sorry, I know you touched on it, but could you explain a little bit more about why the levy is different? It's just based on the type of grant this year?
yeah, so it's pretty, for every dollar of qualified expenditures, and so qualified is the key word, right? I submit a report to the state every month, letting them know my actual expenditures and any revenues that I received. And then the federal government on a quarterly basis reimburses me 66 cents on the dollar. So that is my revenue pot. So if, assuming I spend $813,000 in expenses, I'm anticipating receiving $578,000 in reimbursements from the federal government. But if I don't spend my expenditures, they're not going to give me money back on money I didn't spend. So the more I spend, the more money I get back. Yeah. So it seems it's like an oxymoron, right? So my budget ask is more, but my levy request is less.
Well, thank you. I think I'm on the road to understanding that someday. Thank you. So let's do a motion in a second and a vote on, unless anybody else has any further questions for Josie, I should say. Good. To approve the child support budget and pass it along to exec. Supervisor Gilbert and Supervisor Vandermeulen, all in favor of passing along the child support proposed budget. Any opposed? All right. Thank you, Josie. Next up is emergency management. Melissa.
Thank you. Kind of similar to Josie, I really don't have any riveting changes in my budget. There was a slight decrease in state reimbursement in the emergency management portion. That was statewide. They reduced the reimbursement to the departments. So there was really nothing that we could do about that. Again, it's not a large change, but it is a change in the revenue. We did have a small increase in the revenue for the communications portion, which is basically our leases that we have on our tower, Menominee Tower that we own. Just due to the annual leases increase, there is a small increase in that revenue. As far as the expenditures, again, really the increases that I have would be in salary and fringe for the most part. I think I had a couple $100 increase here and there in operating supplies. The only one that was a little bit larger increase was in the emergency communication section of my budget for building rental. And we did have a new lease that we signed recently with another tower that we lease space on for radio communications. And so that's why that increased significantly. Again, still the whole line item is 20,000. So it's not a large amount, but it did increase. Do you have any questions about those changes?
Anybody have any questions? No, makes sense. Let's do the same thing for emergency management. Motion and a second. Supervisor Jetson, Supervisor Vandermeulen, all in favor of approving the emergency management budget, passing it along, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay. Next up is the medical examiner, Marcy.
Thank you. We're kind of moving along the same theme here of a minimal, that's yours, I apologize. That's dispatch calling me now, so I'm gonna make this quick. Minimal, changes, and the largest area would be in the salary and fringe for our office as well. Of the expenses that are within my control in the operating expenses, the increase that you will see actually, is in Eau Claire County, so that won't affect our county's, change at all. And that increase is in forensics and blood tests, and we base that on a 3-year, we followed it for 3 years in our projected trends. So we increased on both of those accounts for Eau Claire County. Since we contract for services, we bill them for each and every test, body bag, any equipment whatsoever. So we get all of that money back. Otherwise, there is not many changes other than IT. And we moved a couple of line items that don't affect the budget overall.
Sounds good. Anybody have any questions for Marcy? Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the medical examiner's budget for 2025? Supervisor Vandermeulen and Supervisor Wilsey, all in favor?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Of course, thank you. Next up is the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff, you could give us an overview, please.
Sure, just a quick overview. There's looks like an overall 4.17% increase from 2024 to 2025, but the operating expense is really 1.01, basically a 1% increase. Other than that, the largest increase is wages and fringe benefits at 8.12%. So the operating expenses have pretty much stayed the same from the 2 years. However, we have contracts, food service contracts, medical contracts and stuff for the jail that we have automatic annual increases in, is why you'll see an increase in the operating expenses. We do have an RFP out for jail medical. Our contract was up with ACH, so we'll see. We could go down, but the likelihood is not that we may see more of an increase than what we budgeted for, because that's what a lot of sheriffs are seeing across the state is jail medical's starting to cost them more and more. But yeah, other than that, that's kind of the overview. Touch on the some of the proposed 2025 budget ARPA funding. You'll have an opportunity to address the budget adjustment from the CFO's recommendation. We're budgeted for $310,000 for ARPA funding in 2025. That needs to be spent, the way I understand it, by the end of the year. And Beata can talk about that when that rolls around, but that would change the funding need as well. That the ARPA funds I wouldn't need that $310,000 in my 2025 budget if that budget adjustment is approved to be spent on squads in 2024. But it's kind of the overview. There's a lot of different line items as you can go through and see where we try and be realistic every year when we sit down and what our actual costs were and what our actual revenues were when we project the future year budgets. But so you'll see some changes, in revenues. If those went down, it's because we actually didn't make as much in revenue last year. This year is what we had projected, so we decreased those to be realistic and give you a realistic budget.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there another request for the position that didn't get approved for the
That's a good question. Yes, there is another a request, an additional request. I don't know where that stands. Chris and Beata would have to.
Okay.
We did submit a rec deputy position though.
Okay, that's in this budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Along with the equipment to provide, to get him set up, her set up.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the sheriff? Supervisor Vanderbilt.
You show a 99% reduction in donations. Is this, explain more about donations and whether it's predictable and where they come from?
That's the challenge with donations. Well, first of all, like our K-9 line item, my chief deputy and I don't believe it should be part of our budget because it's a donated line item that gets rolled over from year to year. And we have no idea what to predict, what we're going to take in for that and what our expenses may be. So Marshall worked with Beata on kind of cleaning that up a little bit, and she may have a better explanation for why that reduced. But it's a donation line item that specifically for our K-9 that we roll over from year to year. But we also do get donations for our first responder program. that they'll work an event, they're unpaid. But, the Nap Valley Riders or, Snowmobile Club will make a donation to the first responder program for $350 for them working and being at their watercross event and things like that. So, and those, we come back, we have to come back with a budget adjustment then if monies are received to get permission to spend that money. So, it was kind of a ironing out more of a how it should be penciled in the books type of thing.
Anybody else? And like the sheriff said, we'll have that budget adjustment after we go through these budgets, which would, if we approve it, change the numbers pretty significantly. Can I get a motion to approve the sheriff's proposed budget? Supervisor Jetson, Supervisor Gilbert, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you, Sheriff. And now on to the courts and Katie.
Yeah, yep. It's kind of similar theme as well. A little bit of an increase for our salaries. I readjusted our revenues to align with what they actually are. So there is a 2.76% decrease in revenue, but I wanted to align that appropriately as to what we've been collecting over the years. Our major changes to our expenditures is going to be a slight increase or quite a big increase for our indigent attorney fees. We're budgeting that to be $76,000 from $30,000. We're just seeing quite more of a need for court-appointed attorneys. And the courts are also wanting to start appointing court-appointed attorneys for juvenile cases for the parents to help kind of bolster reunification and provide them attorneys throughout the process. So if we do that, we're expecting that there will be a significant increase to that expenditure. The other line item is our interpreter fees. I know you've heard me talk about a lot of cases needing interpreters. I did increase that to $50,000 just to align with the need that we're seeing in the court system. Other than that, our line items, I think, are kind of slight increases and a little bit of decreases. Are there more questions about other concerns of line items? For the most notable changes that I kind of thought I can point out for everybody.
Does the number that you chose for the translators correlate with this year, or is it?
Yes,
Even a little
correct. This is
bit.
this would be consistent with what our expenditure rate is for 2024. We're estimating at about $50,000 for 2024. That's why we picked that number for 2025.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Katie?
Yeah, so the interpreters they're all private certified interpreters. The courts are required to have a certified interpreter for court hearings. For conversations at like the clerk of court's window or over the phone, I've purchased a cheaper device that we can use to communicate with individuals about like their payments or what their court dates are. Our courts are trying to schedule interpreters at the same time. So say there's multiple cases with Spanish speaking individuals, like Judge Wagner, Judge Meyer, and Judge Peterson have been blocking off afternoons or 2 to 3 hour time blocks where we just have one interpreter come in and interpret for all of those cases or conduct hearings by Zoom so interpreters don't need to drive here. We're just seeing a large increase of cases where individuals don't speak the English language and we're required by statutes to have an interpreter for them. Yeah, we're trying our best to reduce it as much as possible, but when the cases come forward, no matter what they may be, we have to have the interpreters there for them. And the kind of the bad part is with interpreters is there's no restriction on what they can charge. So I have staff that try to contact the cheapest interpreters in the area or by Zoom. So we've used interpreters out of state in Milwaukee and Madison because their rate is different. It might be $15 an hour cheaper, but overall it does add up after a while. So we're trying to price shop the best that we can. Yes, yeah.
Any other questions for Katie? All right. Anybody want to make a motion to approve? Supervisor Vandermeulen, Supervisor Wilsey, all in favor of approving the court's proposed budget for 2025, say aye. 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 Right. And Sarah's budget is through the admin, so we are to the district attorney. Andrea.
Well, I wish I had more information for you. So all I can say is I'm trying to be conservative with my budget regarding the uncertainty of federal, it's Victims of Crime Act, which is federal grant funds that we received. And so those fund a large portion of the victim witness assistance in the district attorney's office. So we have a victim witness coordinator, and then there are 2 assistants that are currently filled and a third that was approved last year. And so I'm just trying to be conservative, given there is information that federal VOCA funds may decrease in this next grant period. So we've been on a continuing grant period for a while, and now it just turned competitive. So we submitted that request, and we should hopefully, our grant funding ends September 30th of 2024. But the federal grants are sometimes run a little bit late, but I'm hoping by the October meeting, I'll have more information regarding the budget, which I know isn't ideal and isn't real helpful for you when you're in a budget process. But what I can say is there's rumors that mandated services such as victim witness are given priority over like nonprofit organizations such as the Bridge to Hope. So you might have received or seen flyers from the Bridge to Hope that they say they're facing a $150,000 deficit. I think that's their strategic plan to, in the event that funding goes first. We have received nothing in writing that that's the case, that 950 services or state mandated services will receive more funding, but I believe that's sort of been the belief of individuals. So at this point, I put down that we would receive 0 from the VOCA funds. We also receive state funds, which is sort of similar to what Josie was describing, as you spend some dollars, you get some reimbursed. And so if we don't get VOCA funds, we can try to increase our Chapter 950 funds as well. So right now, it's just a wait and see. And then I outlined in my kind of Word document the increases to the budget, just the interpreter line, which is $2,000, pretty minimal, but we need some line item. I have no idea what to start at, but I think that that's an appropriate number based on what we've used in the past. And then our Axon purchase, that's for our digital evidence, which has gone well and I think is needed, and it's pretty much paying for itself. So my hope is that will continue, and then hopefully I'll know more by October. Questions?
I don't think so. Thank you for the explanation. So we will need a motion to approve this version of the district attorney's budget and pass it along. Supervisor Wilsey, Supervisor Vandermeulen, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, for putting those together and for the explanations and overviews. Let's see. Oh, next up is the sheriff's budget adjustment, which he mentioned briefly. And if you'd like to elaborate a little bit more, Sheriff.
Sure, and I may have to have Beata come up and explain this in a little more detail. First of all, the resolution that was included in the packet, I don't know if you've got an updated one for the 310,000. Did that go out, Beata? Okay.
Yeah, it says
It's
$180.
$180,000 is the one that went out in the packet. Beata has asked us to increase that to the full $310,000 to try and spend that ARPA funding this year on squads and equipment. And we're actually able to get squads now. So before they turn around and we order them at the end of the year and we don't see them until 2026, we figured we better take advantage of getting our hands on squads now. And so we're looking at buying 4 squads, 2 SUVs, 2 trucks, and then a transport van for the jail that's getting up there in mileage. So we're asking for that earmarked ARPA funding for 2025's budget to be spent in 2024.
I think that makes sense. Anybody else like some further explanation from Beata? I think it's the 310, right?
310 is my request. Yeah, we'd have to have a new resolution drafted.
Yeah.
In fact, I think Beata might have it drafted already, or Marshall, my chief deputy, has it.
Sounds good. Yes. So what we are voting on is the 310 for the 4 squads and 1 van. Because
Right.
because the ARPA funds won't be available next year.
Right.
All right, can I get a motion to approve this budget adjustment? Supervisor Jetson, Supervisor Gilbert. Any more discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The adjustment is approved. All right. Does anybody have any exciting announcements? No? Well, me neither. Next meeting will be here on September 30th at 4:30, and we are adjourned.